Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Now, there are countless cursed and haunted items all around the world. Today we're going to take a look at just a few of them. So let's have a look. Now, this first item is a painting called The Hands Resist Him, painted by an artist called William Stoneham in 1972. The image is a picture based upon himself as a child, aged 5. The painting represents himself. The glass behind him represents the dividing world between the fantasy world and the real awake world. The doll-like figure standing next to him is kind of a guide helping him through this fantasy world. I really like this picture. I've always liked this since the first time I saw it. It kind of reminds me of a Rene Magritte painting. I don't know if you know Rene Magritte, but he kind of paints things, sort of a lot of things that are ordinary, but he can turn them into sort of really eerie and creepy sort of images. Now, in this painting, the kind of doll character that's standing next to the boy is holding on to, which is apparently a kind of a battery device with cables coming out of it. We'll come back to that a bit later. Once the painting had been finished, it was taken to the Fine Garden Gallery in Beverly Hills, California, where it was going to be reviewed by an art critic called Henry Seldis. Okay, so once the painting had been reviewed and was in the gallery for a while, it was purchased by an actor, a famous actor called John Marley. He was quite famous for appearing in the Godfather films. He was in the scene that he woke up next to the horse's head. Now, within 1 year of the painting being taken to the Fine Garden Gallery, both the art gallery owner and the critic who reviewed the painting, Henry Seldis, both died. Henry Seldis's death was slightly suspicious. So after John Marley's death, the actor, the painting was discovered by a couple. It was abandoned inside an old brewery. So they took it home with them and they decided to hang it in their children's bedroom. Now, the new owners made this picture extremely famous. They decided to place this item on eBay after a string of paranormal events that had happened within the home. Okay, so after the painting was hung in the children's bedrooms, the children began coming into the parents' bedrooms of an evening and tell them that the painting wouldn't let them sleep, that the boy had been trying to climb his way out of the picture, the hands were trying to grab at them, and the doll-like figure who was holding the battery apparently turned into a gun and was threatening the children with it. Now, the eBay listing had words like, "Do not buy if you've had no experience with the paranormal, and this is a not for the faint of heart," written in the description. Now, a lot of people who actually looked at the item on eBay said that they had strange, eerie feelings, that they felt sick, they felt nauseous, just even looking at the picture. But this obviously worked to the owner's benefit because the item sold for over $1,000. Now, the new owner who purchased this from eBay has stated that they'll never sell this painting, that they really like it, but their children have said that they do not want it in the main area of the house, so it's been placed in the back rooms where it's sort of set away from the rest of the family. But they still say to this day that it does have real creepy feelings around this picture and have been some sort of paranormal experiences with it. Now, do you think this picture is cursed, or is it just a sort of an eerie looking picture and everybody's been caught up within the hype? Now, this next item is called the Bassano vase. Very, very little is known about this item. There is only one known photo in existence. It was cast in pure silver back in the 15th century, and it was given as a gift to an Italian bride from a village just outside of Napoli. Now, on the night of her wedding, she was found dying on her bedroom floor, clutching the vase to her chest and vowed for revenge with her last dying breath. Now, had she cursed the vase as she was dying, or had the vase already been cursed before she had hold of it? After the Italian bride's death, the vase was passed down to family members from person to person. Now, each one of these members of her family died in mysterious circumstances. The family had realised that the vase was causing all these deaths. It was hidden. Some say it was buried. In 1988, the vase was rediscovered, and the person who found it found a note inside the vase written on a piece of paper saying, "Beware, this vase brings death." It obviously didn't put off the new owner, but they did decide to sell it at auction. And this is where the deaths began again. Its first new owner was a pharmacist. He had the vase for 3 months before he died. The second owner was a surgeon who was only 37 years old. He had the vase for 2 months before he died. The third new owner was an archaeologist who loved the vase for its fantastic Renaissance looking artwork on the vase. He held the vase for 3 months before he died. Now, by this time, the vase was beginning to get a really bad reputation for itself. But it was once again sold at auction, where the new owner died shortly after purchasing. And his owner decided that this vase had to go, so they threw it from their window. Now, once it was thrown from the window, it hit a policeman on the head. The policeman quickly rushed inside and told off the owners of the house, gave them a ticket, and said, "You've got to take the vase back." But the owners refused to take the vase back, so it went back to the police station with the policeman. Police had heard the reputation of this vase and decided that it had to be re-hidden, and it was either buried or taken to a church where it would never be found again. Now, the time that this vase was made, silver was a very, very curious metal for it to be made out of. The silver normally used to sort of ward off evil, but this has kind of drawn evil to it. So little is known about this vase that it's not even 100% sure whether this thing truly existed or not, or was it just a local legend. Now, this item is called the Myrtle Plantation Mirror. This story begins in the home of Mr. and Mrs. Woodruff. Now, Mr. Woodruff was a judge. He owned a plantation, which means he also had the deplorable act of slave ownership. Now, there was one slave out of many slaves that were on this plantation. Her name was Chloe. She was a very young girl, very clever. Because she was so clever and so bright, and apparently very pretty as well, the family, the Mr. and Mrs. Woodruff, really had a real disdain for her. They were so cruel to her and horrible and nasty. But because she was so smart, she used to eavesdrop on the family and listen to what they were saying about her, and trying to find ways that she could sort of get out of this cruelty, sort of do things that they particularly wanted her to do. Unfortunately, she was caught while she was eavesdropping. Now, the horrible punishment that she was given was to have her ears sliced from her head by a knife. And then she was made to wear a green turban on her head. Now, as you can imagine, she was furious with this. She was so angry. She was rightfully angry as well. It was a despicable act for them to cause upon this young girl. And she decided to take her revenge. Now, the Woodruff family had a couple of young children. Now, one of the children was just turning 9. So on her 9th birthday, she was made a birthday cake. And Chloe decided she was going to poison the cake. Now, she hadn't planned on killing anybody. She just wanted to make these people sick and ill. And one of her main aims out of this was to nurse these people back to health. Now, in the Deep South, a healer was a very well sought after sort of person, and she was really hoping that if she'd sort of nurse these people back to health, she wouldn't have to toil away in the fields. But unfortunately, the poison was too strong, and she killed Mrs. Woodruff and both the children. Now, the rest of the slaves on the plantation caught wind of this and found out what she had done. And I suppose to sort of save themselves, they hanged Chloe to death and then tied rocks to her legs and dropped her into the Mississippi River. Now, all the new owners of the plantation had real bad luck. The people who owned it after the Woodruffs, the whole family nearly were wiped out by TB, and then it was passed to the daughter of that family. So the daughter and her new husband took charge. They were called Mr. and Mrs. Winters. Now, one day, an unknown man rode up to the plantation on a horse and was calling for Mr. Winters. When Mr. Winter came out to find out what was going on, the man on the horse drew a gun and shot him. Now, Mr. Winters stumbled back into the house, up the stairs, and then died in his wife's arms in one of the bedrooms. Now, apparently to this day, you can still hear the sound of heavy hoofs outside the plantation and then heavy feet running up the stairs. In recent years, the plantation has been used as a film set on a few films. One of the most famous ones was A Long Hot Summer. The cast and crew all had these strange experiences on set. They were witnessing furniture being moved around the set. Everyone had this real creepy, eerie feeling that there was something watching them. Now, the latest owners were the Myers family, who purchased it in the 1970s. The family witnessed many different apparitions around the house, but they did witness a few times, on a few occasions, the ghost of a girl wearing a green turban. Now, they took a photo from outside the property, which was for insurance purposes. Now, you can see a figure in the picture that wasn't there when the photo was taken. Now, in the grand hallway entrance in the plantation stands a mirror, and it's been there for many, many years, even back in the time when it was Mr. and Mrs. Woodruff who owned the property. Many owners and people who visit the plantation say that they've seen reflections in the corner of their eyes of children looking at them. Handprints always appear on the mirror in exactly the same place. Now, on a few occasions, the mirror has been taken away to be re-glassed or re-silvered, but these handprints always return to the same spot. Now, this item is called the Busby Stoop Chair. This has been intertwined with the murder of Daniel Awerty in 1702. Now, in North Yorkshire in the UK, there was a town called Thirsk. This is where the Busby Stoop Inn stands. It's been known throughout the years for being a place of criminal activity, coining, which is basically the forgery of coins. Now, Daniel Awerty moved to a place called Kirby Wisk, which is just a few miles away from the town of Thirsk. Now, he was a very known forger. People suggest that he moved to this town to sort of get away from certain people who might have been after him, but he still carried on his criminal activity of coining, the forgery of coins. Now, another man who followed him up there was his son-in-law, a man by the name of Thomas Busby. He joined Daniel in this town to sort of continue the forgery of coins, where they were trying to earn some money. Now, one evening, after some sort of heavy drinking, Thomas Busby came back to the sort of cottage where they were living and found Daniel Awerty in his favourite chair. He threatened him, told him to get out of his chair. Now, this turned into a huge argument, and Daniel Awerty threatened to take his daughter away from Thomas and move away. Now, Thomas Busby didn't take that threat lightly, and he beat Daniel Awerty to death with a hammer. Now, in 1702, he was found guilty by the court magistrate, and he was hanged to death. Now, his body was displayed on a hanging post opposite a coaching inn on the road that led to Thirsk. Now, before he was hanged, on his way to the gallows, he made a curse. He threatened that anyone who sat in his chair would be cursed. He'd been hanged and his body had been displayed outside the coaching inn. This is when the inn became called the Busby Stoop Inn. Now, one of the landladies who took charge of the Busby Stoop Inn was named Karen Rowley, and she quite often said that she would see towering shapes sort of walking up and down the stairs and moving within the walls and down into the basement. Now, in 1894, a chimney sweep who had been drinking at the inn had sat in this chair. And when he left on his way home, nobody truly knows what happened to him, but he was found in the morning hanged from a gatepost. Now, just across the road from the Busby Stoop Inn is an airfield, Skipton on Swale Airfield. Now, a lot of airmen during World War II were dared to sit in this chair, and those who took up the challenge never made it home from battle. Now, also 2 RAF airmen who were both dared to sit in the chair both died in a car crash on exactly the same day as sitting in the chair. Many other cases of deaths and accidents after people who'd sat in a chair. One afternoon, a group of builders were daring their young labourer to sit in the chair. Now, once he had sat in the chair, when they returned to work, he fell off of a roof exactly the same day after sitting in the chair. Now, the landlord of the inn decided that enough was enough, and he decided to take the chair out of the main area where everyone sat and put it in the basement. But in 1972, a delivery man from the brewery was taking barrels into the basement, and he decided to have a rest, so he sat in a chair. Now, on his way back to the brewery, the delivery driver had a crash, killed instantly. This time, the owner of the inn decided enough was enough and the chair had to go, so he offered it to the Thirsk Museum, where he asked the owners to never let anybody sit in this chair again. So the chair was hung from the wall in the Thirsk Museum, where it stands to this day. Now, was this chair truly cursed, or were all these deaths and accidents just truly coincidental? Now, this next item is called the Tallman bunk beds. In 1987, Alan and Debbie Tallman went to a second-hand shop and bought a second-hand set of bunk beds. This would be a very unwise decision and cause 9 months of pure horror for the family. The children, who were never sickly children, all of a sudden became very ill and very sickly all the time. Their young son Danny had a clock radio in his bedroom, which would turn off and turn on at all hours of the day. The dials would change themselves automatically. The paranormal events soon started to escalate. Now, the young daughter in the family was laying in bed one evening when she saw a red-eyed, sort of witchy-looking figure standing behind the door looking at her. Now, the family did bring in their local pastors to try and sort of clear the house of any sort of bad energy. Now, this didn't help cease the paranormal activity. More things started happening. Doors were beginning to slam shut, knocking on the walls, voices. The children were asking to leave the house, that they were that petrified. Now, Alan, the father, became really enraged that his children were suffering for this so much, and he decided to tell the spirits, or whatever it was that were affecting his family, to leave them alone and fight him. Weeks after these incidents, at 2 a.m. On January the 7th, 1988, Alan, the father, returned home from a very late shift at work. When he pulled up on a driveway, he heard a voice calling him to come here from behind the house. When he went to investigate, he found nobody there. When he came back round to the front of the house, he found that the garage was on fire. Now, he ran indoors to find a fire extinguisher. As soon as he came back, there was no sign of fire, no scorching on the garage door, no nothing. Like, there was no fire there at all. Now, Alan began sleeping in the same room as his children, just to sort of protect them as much as he could. And he recalls one night he woke up and there was fog in the bedroom surrounding the beds, and he heard a voice telling him that you're dead. Now, when Alan was doing his late shifts at work, he started to ask one of his members of his family if he could come and stay with them, just to sort of look out for the children and his wife. Now, this family member was very much a skeptic, didn't believe in any kind of paranormal activity or anything like that. But when he was there, he witnessed this witch-like figure with the red eyes. Now, as soon as this was witnessed, the family decided that enough was enough, and they left the house, moved back to their old house. Now, once they had moved back to their old house in April of 1998, the bunk bed was destroyed as they moved out. Now, this was documented in a book called Haunted America, but the book never claims that the bunk bed was the sort of the antagonist of the story here, that the spirits didn't come through this. They blamed it on a Native American Indian burial ground, which was situated sort of on the grounds of where the house was built. Thank you for joining me today. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Sorry this video took so long to come out. I was extremely ill with a flu for well over a week. Could barely even talk. Hopefully the next video won't take as long to come out. But again, I really hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please leave a comment, please leave a like. Subscribe would be fantastic. Got a few new subscribers to the channel, which is always amazing. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one.